There is a single speech given on a hillside 2,000 years ago that historians, philosophers, and even people who reject religion entirely have called the greatest sermon ever spoken. It is short. You can read the whole thing out loud in about 15 minutes. But here is what makes it strange. Almost everyone has heard pieces of it without knowing where the pieces came from. Turn the other cheek. Go the extra mile. Judge not. Do not let your right hand know what your left hand is doing. Build your house on the rock. These are not proverbs that floated up out of nowhere. They are all one speech, one afternoon, one voice. And the people who first heard it did not walk away comforted. The text says they were astonished, shaken, as if the ground under their religion had just moved, because the man on that hill was not adding a few new rules to the old ones. He was doing something far more unsettling. He was reaching past the rules entirely, down to the place the rules could never reach. His name was Jesus of Nazareth, and the speech is what we now call the Sermon on the Mount. Here is the one idea this whole study turns on. Jesus was not interested in making good people behave better. He was after something deeper than behavior. He was after the heart. Every line in this sermon, from the first blessing to the last warning, is built to take you from the outside of a person to the inside, from what you do to what you want, from the act to the appetite that produces the act. And once you hear it that way, you cannot unhear it. The most familiar sermon in history becomes the most uncomfortable. So let us climb the hill and listen to the whole thing the way it was first heard. The Gospel of Matthew sets the scene in just a few words. Jesus sees the crowds, and he goes up onto a mountainside. This is a deliberate picture. Centuries earlier, another man had climbed a mountain to receive the law of God. His name was Moses, and the mountain was Sinai. Now another teacher climbs a hill. But notice the difference. Moses went up to receive the law from God. This teacher sits down and speaks it as his own. He sits. In that world, a teacher sat to teach with authority. His students gathered close around him, and he began. He does not open with a command. He does not open with a threat. He opens with a list of blessings. We call them the Beatitudes, from the Latin word for blessed, and every single one of them is upside down. Blessed are the poor in spirit, he says, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Not the rich in spirit, not the confident, the self-made, the spiritually accomplished. The poor in spirit. The ones who know they have nothing to offer God. The very first word of the sermon hands the kingdom to people who have given up trying to earn it. That is the door. Everything else walks through it. Blessed are those who mourn, he says, for they shall be comforted. The world says, blessed are those who never have to grieve. Jesus says the opposite. The ones who feel the weight of a broken world are the ones who will be held. Blessed are the meek, he says, for they shall inherit the earth. Meek does not mean weak. It means strength under control. The horse that could run anyone over, walking gently. And it is these, not the conquerors, who inherit everything. Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they shall be satisfied. Notice the verb, hunger, thirst. He is not blessing those who have already arrived. He is blessing those who ache for what is right, who want it the way a starving man wants bread. Blessed are the merciful, he says, for they shall receive mercy. Here, the door swings both ways. The mercy you give and the mercy you receive are tied together with a single thread. You will see this thread again before the sermon ends. Blessed are the pure in heart, he says, for they shall see God. Pure in heart. Not pure in record, not pure in reputation. The heart again. The place where no one else can look. That is where Jesus is aiming this entire speech. Blessed are the peacemakers, he says, for they shall be called children of God. Not the peacekeepers, who simply avoid conflict. The peacemakers who walk into the conflict and build something whole out of the broken pieces. And then the last one turns dark. Blessed are those who are persecuted for righteousness' sake, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. He is telling the people sitting in front of him that following this path may cost them everything, and he calls that too a blessing. Take the 8 together, and a portrait appears. This is not a checklist of good deeds. It is a description of a certain kind of person: humble, grieving over what is wrong, gentle, starving for goodness, merciful, clean on the inside, a maker of peace, willing to suffer for it. None of those are things you do. They are things you become. The Beatitudes describe a heart before they ever describe a hand. Then Jesus turns to the crowd and gives them 2 images for who they now are. You are the salt of the earth, he says. But if the salt loses its taste, what is it good for? Nothing except to be thrown out and trampled. Salt, in that world, did 2 things. It preserved food from rot, and it gave it flavor. His followers are meant to slow the decay of the world and to make it taste like something worth living in. You are the light of the world, he says. A city set on a hill cannot be hidden, and no one lights a lamp and then hides it under a basket. They set it on a stand so it gives light to everyone in the house. Then the point. Let your light shine before others, so that they may see your good works and give glory to your Father in heaven. Notice where the credit goes. Not to you. The light is meant to be seen, but it points past you to the one who lit it. And here, the sermon reaches its first turning point, because someone in that crowd is starting to worry. This teacher sounds new. Is he throwing out everything the people have believed? The law of Moses? The words of the prophets? All of it? Jesus answers directly. Do not think that I have come to abolish the law or the prophets, he says. I have not come to abolish them, but to fulfill them. This is one of the most important sentences in the whole sermon. He is not erasing the old commandments. He is filling them up, carrying them to the place they were always pointing. And then he says something that must have stopped the crowd cold. Unless your righteousness exceeds that of the scribes and Pharisees, you will never enter the kingdom of heaven. Understand who the Pharisees were. They were the religious experts, the men who counted every herb to tithe, who never missed a fast. If anyone kept the rules, they did. And Jesus says, your righteousness has to go beyond theirs, which sounds impossible until you realize he is not asking for more rule-keeping. He is asking for a different kind of righteousness altogether, one that starts in the heart. And now he shows them what he means. 6 times in a row, he sets up the same pattern. You have heard that it was said, but I say to you. He takes a command everyone knows, and then he drives it inward, past the action, into the desire underneath. You have heard that it was said, do not murder. But I say to you, anyone who is angry with his brother will be subject to judgment. Stop and feel how radical that is. The old command forbade the act of killing. Jesus reaches behind the act to the anger that fuels it and says, that is where the murder begins. You may have never lifted a hand against anyone, but have you nursed contempt? Have you written someone off in your heart? Jesus says the kingdom cares about that too. And then he gives a strange instruction. If you are bringing your gift to the altar and remember that someone has something against you, leave the gift. Go. Be reconciled first. Then come back and worship. Worship can wait. A broken relationship cannot. That is how seriously the heart matters here. You have heard that it was said, do not commit adultery. But I say to you, anyone who looks at a woman lustfully has already committed adultery with her in his heart. Again, the same move. The old command guarded the bed. Jesus guards the imagination. The sin does not start when the body acts. It starts in the gaze, in the wanting, and he uses shocking language. If your eye causes you to sin, he says, tear it out. Better to lose a part than to lose the whole. He is not asking anyone to actually maim themselves. He is using a hammer to make a point. Treat the things that pull your heart toward ruin as deadly. Do not negotiate with them. Then he touches the most painful subject of all: divorce. In his day, some teachers allowed a man to divorce his wife for almost any reason. A burnt meal, a wrinkle of displeasure, and she was left with nothing. Jesus closes that door. Marriage, he says, was meant to be a permanent joining, not a contract a man could tear up at will. Behind the rule is a heart that takes its promises seriously. You have heard that it was said, "Do not break your oath." But I say to you, do not swear an oath at all. Let your yes be yes, and your no be no. In a world where people swore elaborate vows to seem trustworthy, Jesus says the truly honest person does not need them. Your plain word should be enough. If you have to swear to be believed, something in you is already broken. And now, he reaches the teaching that shocks people most of all. You have heard that it was said, "An eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth." That law was originally a limit. It kept revenge from spiraling. You could take an eye for an eye, but no more than that. It was mercy disguised as a measurement. But Jesus pushes further than a limit. He says, do not resist an evil person. If someone slaps you on the right cheek, turn to him the other also. If someone sues you for your shirt, give him your coat as well. If someone forces you to walk 1 mile, walk 2. This is not weakness. It is a refusal to let another person's cruelty set the terms of your soul. It is freedom. You will not be dragged down into their game. And then comes the highest, hardest command in the whole sermon. You have heard that it was said, love your neighbor and hate your enemy. But I say to you, love your enemies and pray for those who persecute you. Love your enemies, not tolerate, not avoid, love, and pray by name for the very people trying to destroy you. And he gives the reason, so that you may be children of your Father in heaven. For he makes his sun rise on the evil and the good, and sends rain on the just and the unjust. God is kind to people who curse him. The sun still rises on his enemies. And Jesus says, if you want to look like your Father, that is the family resemblance. He closes this whole section with a single staggering sentence. Be perfect, therefore, as your heavenly Father is perfect. That is the bar. Not the Pharisees, God himself, which tells you this was never a ladder you could climb on your own. It was a height that drives you to your knees. Then Jesus turns from how we treat people to how we approach God. And here the theme of the hidden heart becomes loud and clear. Be careful, he warns, not to practice your righteousness in front of others, to be seen by them. If you do, you have no reward from your Father. He takes the 3 pillars of devotion in his world, giving to the poor, praying, fasting, and to each one, he says the same thing, do it in secret. When you give, he says, do not sound a trumpet so others will admire you. Give so quietly that your left hand does not know what your right hand is doing. When you pray, do not stand on the street corner performing for the crowd. Go into your room. Shut the door. Pray to your Father who is unseen. And when you fast, do not put on a gloomy, hungry face so people will pity your holiness. Wash your face. Look normal. Let it be between you and God alone. 3 times, the same point. The audience for your devotion is an audience of 1. The moment you perform for people, you have already collected your whole reward, and it is a small one. And right in the middle of teaching them how to pray, Jesus gives them the words, the prayer the whole world would come to know. Our Father in heaven, hallowed be your name. Before a single request, the prayer establishes the relationship. He is not a distant force. He is Father, and he is holy. Your kingdom come, your will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. The first thing we are taught to want is not our comfort, but His reign, His will breaking into this world. Give us this day our daily bread. Only now does the prayer turn to our needs. And notice the smallness of the request. Bread for today. Enough trust for one day at a time. And forgive us our debts, as we also have forgiven our debtors. There is that thread again, the one from the Beatitudes. The mercy we receive is bound to the mercy we give. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. The prayer ends as it began, independence. We cannot keep ourselves, we ask to be kept. And the moment the prayer ends, Jesus underlines that one line about forgiveness. If you forgive others, your Father will forgive you. But if you do not forgive others, neither will your Father forgive you. An unforgiving heart and a forgiven heart cannot live in the same chest. The grace you refuse to pass on is grace you have not really understood. Then Jesus turns to the thing that quietly rules most human hearts: money, and what we treasure. Do not store up treasures on earth, He says, where moths and rust destroy and thieves break in and steal. Store up treasures in heaven, where nothing can touch them. And then the line that explains why. For where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. He has been after the heart this whole time. And here He tells us how to find it. Look at what you treasure. Look at where your money and your daydreams go. Your heart is already there, waiting. No one can serve two masters, He says. You cannot serve both God and money. You will love one and despise the other. There is no splitting the heart down the middle. And then, gently, He turns to worry. The thing that eats so many of us alive. Do not be anxious about your life, He says. What you will eat, what you will drink, what you will wear. Look at the birds of the air. They do not plant or harvest or store up in barns, and your heavenly Father feeds them. Are you not worth far more than they? Consider the lilies of the field, how they grow. They do not labor or spin, yet not even Solomon in all his glory was dressed like one of these. If God clothes the grass of the field, which is here today and tomorrow is thrown into the fire, will He not much more clothe you, you of little faith? And then the cure for worry, in one line. Seek first the kingdom of God and His righteousness, and all these things will be added to you. Worry is what happens when something smaller than God sits on the throne of your heart. The cure is not to try harder to stop worrying. It is to put the right thing first. Do not be anxious about tomorrow, He says, for tomorrow will be anxious about itself. Each day has enough trouble of its own. Then Jesus turns to the way we look at other people, and He says the words almost everyone has heard: do not judge, or you too will be judged. But this is one of the most misunderstood lines in the whole Bible. He is not telling us to switch off all discernment. He is exposing a particular kind of blindness. Why do you look at the speck of sawdust in your brother's eye, He asks, but pay no attention to the plank in your own? It is a comic, ridiculous picture. A man with a wooden beam jutting out of his own eye, squinting, trying to perform delicate surgery on someone else's speck. First take the plank out of your own eye, He says. Then you will see clearly to help your brother with his. The point is not, never help. The point is, deal with yourself first. Then the tone shifts again, from warning to invitation. Jesus tells them how to come to the Father. Ask, and it will be given to you. Seek, and you will find. Knock, and the door will be opened to you. 3 open doors. The God of this sermon is not hiding. He is a Father waiting to be asked. And Jesus proves it with the most ordinary picture. Which of you, if your son asks for bread, would give him a stone? Or if he asks for a fish, would give him a snake? If you then, though you are evil, know how to give good gifts to your children, how much more will your Father in heaven give good things to those who ask him? Then comes the line that has been called the Golden Rule, the summary of the whole moral law in a single sentence. So in everything, do to others what you would have them do to you. For this sums up the law and the prophets. Notice it is active, not passive. Not merely, do not harm others, but go and do for them the good you wish someone would do for you. It turns morality from a fence into a road. And now the sermon begins to close, and it closes with choices, hard ones. Enter through the narrow gate, he says. For wide is the gate, and broad is the road that leads to destruction, and many go through it. But small is the gate, and narrow the road that leads to life, and only a few find it. The way of this sermon is not the crowded road, it is the path most people walk right past. Then a warning. Watch out for false prophets, he says. They come to you in sheep's clothing, but inwardly they are ravenous wolves. How do you tell the difference? By their fruit ye will recognize them. A good tree cannot bear bad fruit, and a bad tree cannot bear good fruit. There is the heart again. A tree does not choose its fruit. The fruit simply reveals what kind of tree it already is. What comes out of a life shows what is inside it. And then, the very last image, the one Jesus chose to leave ringing in their ears. Everyone who hears these words of mine and puts them into practice, he says, is like a wise man who built his house on the rock. The rain came down, the streams rose, the winds blew and beat against that house. But it did not fall, because it was founded on the rock. But everyone who hears these words of mine and does not put them into practice is like a foolish man who built his house on the sand. The rain came down, the streams rose, the winds blew and beat against that house, and it fell with a great crash. Notice, both men heard the same words. Both built houses that looked fine in the sunshine. The only difference was whether the words went past the ears and into the life. And that is the whole sermon in one picture. It was never enough to admire these words. The storm comes for every house. The only question is what yours is built on. When Jesus finished, Matthew tells us, the crowds were amazed at his teaching because he taught as one who had authority and not as their teachers of the law. The scribes quoted other scribes. They built their authority on the voices that came before them, but this man spoke as though the words were his own to give. And that is the thread that runs through all of it. From the first blessing to the house on the rock, he was never aiming at your behavior alone. He was aiming at the place behavior comes from, the treasure you store, the thing you forgive or refuse to forgive, the desire underneath the deed, the heart. Because in the end, that is what the kingdom of heaven is. Not a tidier life on the outside. A new country on the inside, where God himself is finally on the throne.